adjournment.
Well, I was hoping they would go back and look at, I paid a dollar a foot more than everybody in the whole front of that harbor for my property and that. And 12 years ago, he told me he was gonna fix it. And then Chad told me he was gonna fix it. And it's still the same. I paid $3 a foot, y'all paid $2.
What do you want to split? I'll give you 50 cents. I'm just kidding.
I think I should pay 2 or y'all should pay 3.
Hey.
That would be fair.
Everybody pay the same. Well, that is weird. Why do you think that?
He drew a line. He drew a line on the map and he said everything on this side of the line. I said, who made that line? He said, I did. So it's all public record. When he drew that line, he told me it was because of the demand for that property that has had nothing built on it in 12 years.
All right, ready? Good morning, everybody. This is a regular meeting, Board of Navigation and Canal Commissioners, Willacy County Navigation District. It's Wednesday, December 11th, 2024, 9 a.m., 400 West Hidalgo, Suite 200, Raymondville, Texas. First item on the agenda is review and consideration of previous meeting minutes.
Move to adopt the minute.
Motion is made by Commissioner Kendrick, second by Commissioner Glassos, I'm sorry. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Next item, discussion and additional details required to Port Lease Audit Project, providing provisions and objectives for the project.
I think we skipped number 2.
I'm sorry, public comment, there was none.
Yeah, and then the next one is bids. Review, discussion, and action on bid results for TxDOT funded bulk hub project. All right, so the state of Texas authorized us $8.7 million for bulkhead improvements. They call it repair and restoration, which is basically what this whole project is. They awarded this money back in last December, November time period. We had CSRS put together a engineering package, design it. We had been using designs that were submitted to us by Ferris and Flynn years ago, and they were not even nearly accurate enough for us to build off of. So they basically did the entire engineering design package. It was released for bid in August with a 2-month lead time, which is very unusual, but we wanted to make sure that we could get as many people as possible to bid on the package. We ended up with 5 bids packages coming in. We had the opening on October 29th here, and the low bid for this package was 8.47 million. So that is to do both sides, which what I mean by both sides is what is currently what we call the queuing yard, which has the unfinished 50-foot of right-of-way, and then the other one on the opposite side near the corner of West Harbor and 186. I had it bid in phases because of the cost that we were projecting. We actually projected it to come in at around $11.5 million. So to come in at 8.4 is a good deal for us.
please take into consideration, if you look at the pack papers in front of you, 8.4 is what the contract is for. But if you notice on the second handout that I gave you, the one that says bid awards recommendation letter, you'll notice in there that there's different numbers. Actually, on the second page, there we go. There's different numbers. Those numbers include additional engineering costs, have an engineering person on site 24 hours a day, well, not 24 hours a day, 40 hours a week, which I don't believe we need and they don't believe we need, but that's what they bid it in, they added it into the costs. It also includes other things such as environmental samplings that we do randomly throughout any of these projects, just to make sure they're up to date. So that brings the whole package to about 10.8 million, of which that means out of pocket for us would be $2 million. So when I had them put the package together, I asked them to do it in phases. So the bid package includes a phase 1 and a phase 2. So phase 1 is this queuing yard here that the state's already sunk, several $1 million in building, paving this area. And that seawall, as anybody in town can tell you, and all of you know, that seawall is completely gone, collapsed, just a bunch of rubble laying in the water. This one over here actually still has a part of a seawall still there. It's still usable, dredges and other people come up to it, but it's so deteriorated it needs to be done. So my recommendation is that we accept the package as it was presented. We will start with phase 1, which is the current queuing yard, which has a collapsed seawall. Have them renovate that up to what they estimate is about $6 million. At that point, by that point, we should have funds from tenants. If we do not, we can stop the project there and leave it at that, or we can come up with the 2.2 million or so out of our pocket to finish the project out. But as it's presented, it was presented in 2 phases. Phase 1 is only 6.7 million, including the engineering costs to do that. So if we just approve the package and we let them begin when we reach the end of phase 1 before they move to phase 2, we can say we're done. So, and we have no money invested at all. One thing that we've had a problem with TxDOT recently, we brought this up in the meeting several times, and unfortunately was misquoted, as we all now know happens regularly in the Rainbow Chronicle, said that we owe them $300,000. That's not correct. They owe us $300,000 for not repaying amounts that we've already expended. So we actually already have 2 banks, the one that we normally bank with, and an additional bank in the valley that have both extended us up to $4 million lines of credit that we can, instead of using it out of our operating funds, writing checks and waiting for them to reimburse, we could write checks based on that line of credit, and when they get reimbursed, they would go back to line of credit. So our operating funds stay fully and completely intact.
What's that operating line of credit cost?
4.7%, I believe.
What's the procedure for
What do you
going out for
think?
bids?
Procedures going out for bids is the engineering company posts in local newspapers and what they call it, GAC, is the basic general contractors, and they put it out to all their members and or the local public. In this case, GAC sent it all over the nation, because since it had a 2-month window and the size of the project, they put it out for all over the country. All the bidders that came in are companies that predominantly work in the valley. The one that shows the winner on this is Russell. Russell actually is doing the project in the LNG plant in Brownsville. I believe that's why they were able to come in as low as they were, because they're buying all the sheet metal for that project, and they're just using that write-off at a cheaper price for us, which helped in their advantage and helped us out significantly. That's why we went from what we thought was going to be an $11.5 million project down to 8.6, because they got the material cheaper. So then we give it a closing date. The people come into the meeting, and we open the packages here in the room with all the participants who want to participate. We even did it online this time, and TxDOT representative was sitting in the room with us this time as well, which is unusual, which is great. They're getting that involved. We actually did receive 1 additional bid package this time, but it came in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it can't come in after 10 o'clock in the morning. And so that's how we got where we are.
Now, I read that a lot of them were,
That
they were missing.
little things here.
So that automatically,
Well,
is there, I know that, whenever we send RFPs or anything, if they don't meet the guidelines,
Correct.
you know,
Sure.
so we follow that guideline.
Yes, we did, follow to the letter. That's why the other guy who came in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon didn't get to have his bid open because he didn't follow the guideline. He used an example that one of the enclosures in the announcement had a template filled in basically as an example. This scene that day at 2 o'clock, just as an example, it wasn't the actual time that was on the advertisement or on the cover letter. He used the time inside the document, and I actually submitted that to Allison for her review, and they said, nope, got to be based upon the advertisement.
You gotta follow the guidelines.
Correct.
Explain, if you would, it says, total bid, and it says alternate 1, alternate 2, alternate 3, what's
Yeah,
The alternate program of things were, the size of the place for the crane to sit. That was, one of the alternates was how big the area was going to be. And I actually came to terms with the engineers before it was actually awarded. So that one of the alternates was done away with. As you noticed on the top letter, the other letter that you have here, it shows alternate 0.
alternate 1?
Yeah, alternate 1, 0.
Okay.
So all the alternates were basically zeroed out and not included into the process.
Alternate 3, 2. So alternate 2 is just covering what you call the western bulkhead?
That's right. It was the same thing over here. The original design they came up with was this big, the concrete for the whole project is, I think it's 12 inches, but where the crane sits, they have it at like several feet. And so, in my opinion, overkill. Having been a crane operator myself, I'm like, you don't need that. But this side, they left it at several hundred feet. On this side, they condensed it down to like an 80-foot pad because the site's smaller as far as the reach is going to be concerned, and the crane doesn't have to move around. It just needs to sit in one place. So we were able to reduce the concrete stuff involved.
So they're gonna have to put another slab on the second.
Yeah, well, eventually. Yeah. Again, that will go back to TxDOT and say, hey, you guys want this to be?
So that's not included?
It is not. No. There's no queuing yard, no paving or anything over here. Basically, this is for a bulkhead repair with a 50-foot cap on top of it.
And they're gonna do it all land-based?
I don't know. I suspect that they will. The environmental permit that is in place tells them they're to install a sheet pile by vibration. So as long as they follow that process, which there's no reason not to, then it'll be able to be done from shore. They may, Russell may have a barge that has a crane on it that can do the work, and they may decide to do it because they already have the system in place. They can just show up on site and drive it in. But it'll be a 100-foot, you know.
So what do they do with all the material that's in front of where the bulkhead?
They'll have to haul it off. It'll be disposed.
So that's part of the permit?
That's right.
That gets into the environmental side of it.
That's correct. And that's all been addressed as far as the force concerned.
So you're talking about extra thick piece of concrete, basically the width of that.
That's correct.
So this crane that you're visualizing, is it a set position crane or is it a wheel
This one,
crane?
as of now, just because gantry is just ridiculous. The whole idea of having one of those cranes you see on TV with this big giant gantry crane sticks an arm over the top of the vessel, that's just not realistic for what we're talking about. So it's gonna probably be a 250-ton crane, which you would see at most construction sites. In fact, the cranes are installing the windmills with, they're probably 500-ton cranes. So it's something half that size that would be sitting right there along the edge of the bank. And
Stationary.
It'll be primarily stationary. This side will have a 100-foot area they can kind of move back and forth as they need to so they can reach. But this side does not. It'll be a stationary position.
Is there a opportunity, just thinking out here, that we could proceed with what you call an eastern
Mhm.
bulkhead and not do anything on the western
Oh,
bulkhead?
yeah, absolutely. Could. Sure. No doubt about it. We would easily do that.
So what
And in
would-
fact, right now, monetarily, I would say that's what we should do. We should stop at the end of phase 1. The only thing that we'll have to consider in that is, based on what we have on paperwork here, we'll end up with a value of $1.2 to $2 million money that the state gave us that we'll have to give back.
Yeah.
Wonderful thing to do, but at the same time, it also impacts our future bids when we go to bid for something else. And I go, well, You didn't use all the money they gave you last time.
Can we use it for something else? I mean, it
Well,
didn't just start
yeah.
something.
I can expand on that. When we did this yard, they gave us $3 million, flat rate, flat money. The project complete, turnkey, was 2.3 million. So there was $700,000 left over. So what they did was TxDOT up until the last legislative cycle, so up until 2020, TxDOT could not spend money on the water. It wasn't allowed. Even though they were a maritime division, they could not spend money on water projects. So they stopped at 50 foot back because they weren't supposed to proceed any further. So once they got to that point, they had the $700,000 left. They gave PUD, I think it was 250,000, something like that. PUD got 250,000 to redo pipelines that are coming out of the water tower. TxDOT covered it as part of that project because they tied it in across the channel, and thus it was considered part of it. The remaining 5 million or 500,000 was, as when you go there now, you see these little concrete circles sitting along the edge. What they did was they bored out all these dead men, filled them with concrete and wire, and they're already pre-done. So that's saving us money now because we don't have to do those dead men. They're already installed. All they're going to have to do is just tie into what's already been put in. So this project was able to save probably $500,000–600,000 off the project cost because it's already been done. So we can get them to liquidate any extra monies other places on other projects, but we'll have to do that on a case-by-case basis if we decide. Which that is what I encourage us to do at this moment, is we'll just do phase 1, be done with it, and then deal with the state on how they're going to deal with the extra money. And I can also tell you in the future, right now, TxDOT has a policy, if they award you the money, you don't have a cost share. So when they originally,
It's 100%.
right now it's 100% of what they give you.
Yeah.
They gave us 11.3 million, okay? But that meant we had a cost share, and it was back to 8.7.
Oh.
Well, now they've rewritten the contract, and we have 8.7, and they pay that up front. When it's gone, it's gone. And then we pay whatever's extra. I think that same thing's happening on Airport Road for right now, okay? So they pay us their 2.3 million. Once that's gone, whatever additional it costs us, that's up to us. Okay. What they're doing in the next legislative cycle, though, they're going back to cost shares. So in the future, if we get TxDOT money, we'll have to have a 20% cost share on it. But right now, we're lucky that 8.7 is 8.7.
So if we get all that 8.7 and we decide to call the dogs in after
Right.
after that project, we'll have their 1.7 to give back to them.
Well, we don't have an obligation this time, but yes, theoretically, that's
Right.
true. That's right.
So it'd be zero money for us, period.
Yeah. And I will say that the TxDOT Maritime Division has gone through a major overhaul. They were only been created like 8 years ago, something like that. And they were very problematic. They were good about giving us money, but their bookkeeping was really atrocious. They just underwent an audit from the state, the Texas version of a GAO, and they found all kinds of errors in the Maritime Division. So now they have cracked down seriously on everything. For example, this project has fallen behind schedule because of the rain and also because of the drought. We told them they couldn't use water for a long period of time, so they didn't work for a couple of months. So now TxDOT's cracking down on them that they're supposed to already be done, and they're holding their feet to the fire. So TxDOT Maritime now they don't play games. They have a resident inspector who lives in Corpus area, but everything south of Corpus Christi is her responsibility. So she's here constantly, seeing us, Port Isabel, Harlingen, Brownsville. She's here. So before you'd see a TxDOT Maritime person maybe once a year. She lives here basically. So
Those are the ones we met at the meeting, right? There was a section.
yeah, there was a fixed person. Yeah, that's right.
So that resident inspection of 480 is what you said, we don't really need that.
We don't need 40 hours a week. They actually made a very good suggestion to me that I wish I had done 2 or 3 projects back. Their recommendation was to rent and or acquire one of those cameras you see like in the shopping centers with the police on them, they watch the parking lot. To get 1 or 2 of those as we need them, set them on the site and have it watch the site. So we can look at recordings and say they did this or they didn't. I'll give you a good example of how that would have helped us. When they did the queuing yard, Ferris and Flint had a resident inspector who would come in and out probably 8 or 10 hours a week. All right, well, the company who did the project was supposed to put in a solid PVC 900 scale pipe for the drain line, in one piece with no chances of leakage. Well, they didn't. They piecemeal concrete in. Fortunately, the inspector showing up got there and said, that's not the right pipe. Made a pull the whole thing out, put the proper stuff in place. Well, if we'd had a system, a camera that could watch it, we would have known that they were putting in the wrong stuff before they tried to bury it. So I think it's a great idea. It cuts down on that huge cost for a full-time engineer. And it's something that I have already started doing some preliminary checks to see what's the best way to do it. The engineers themselves who put that outrageous $180,000 in there said, we don't need to be there all the time. We need to do spot checks, but you should do this camera thing. So we're going to check into that.
Well, they could have access to that.
They would be able to watch it
camera
live all day if they wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense than having somebody sitting out there in a trailer 40 hours a week not doing anything. There's nothing happening.
So I had a question. On those holes that they bored and
Mhm.
poured that concrete, will he utilize them in the
Yes.
future?
Yes. No, this project
I
will
just
tie
wanted
the
to
steel.
go
No,
place.
Yeah, that's where the seawall ties
the
into
seawall
that.
will tie into that.
Okay.
They tried to say their engineer that designed the project told me he didn't want to use them. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. We already spent $500,000 on them. You're going to use them because they want to use a helical anchor system, which is fine, and that's what they're going to use over here. But since those are already there, we're going to be utilizing them.
That was my question.
The billing for the contractors, does that go through this engineer?
They go through the engineer.
Okay. So hopefully they keep up with it better than
What's
the other.
currently happening, yes. Yes. I just received a letter this morning from TxDOT's supervisor saying that they're basically holding Ferris and Flynn's feet to the fire about they're not having somebody come by often enough to follow up on the project. So that's why we're moving away from it.
So, not to jump on another topic, but speaking about these TxDOT grants, so what's the thought process on finishing the road
It should be done
at
within.
navigation?
It
I
should
know
be
it
done
should be,
anytime.
but I mean,
No, they did framework. Was it Friday? You said Frank?
they're working.
They're
on
setting
it.
they're working
forms
on it.
right now.
The state of Texas is making them finish the project like now, and they're gonna start penalizing them, charging them a penalty after December 31st. So if it's beyond January, they're gonna be paying a penalty on top of everything else.
Now, that particular road is also gonna turn north there and go up actually towards the gate at the airport?
That's
or
right. Yeah, there's a little 200-foot piece or so that runs up to the gate, yes.
That'll be on us?
No, well, part of that will be yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're about 2.28 right now, and they had 2.3 set aside for the project, so anything above that 2.8 will pay the difference. They also had us write in 2 beacons, and I've argued and fought with them. I think I've gotten rid of that one, but they're still gonna want this one because it's 65-mile-an-hour traffic slowing down for trucks that are turning in that road. So they wanna have some kind of a warning system in place. But the other one, I've convinced them they don't need it. So we'll probably just have to put in 1 beacon. And the only holdup on that's AEP. So you could entertain some kind of a motion on it, we'd all.
Yeah.
Guess we need a motion to accept the bid for the seawall project.
So do Russell.
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
Russell.
I make a motion to accept the Russell Marine LLC for 5.880,
Actually, it's 8.4 for both.
8.4.
Yeah.
That's assuming we do.
That's correct. We're just approving the
Right
project.
now, we
to
wanna
proceed.
go in with
That's
it.
right, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we go in as if we're gonna do everything if we get to the point we do. Decide to do that.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Cavazos,
I second.
second by Commissioner Reyes. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Next item, discussion and additional details required to support lease audit project, providing provisions and objectives of the project.
Okay, you guys asked me last month, thankfully, I'm glad you did, with having a third-party independent auditor come in and audit leases to make sure historically they've been billed correctly and how the processes were done, how people acquire their leases, so on and so forth. great idea. Mr. Kennedy said he wanted to see if we could do a forensic checks on all of them. Also a good idea. However, to do what they classify as an official forensic audit on a lease, to do just the current leases that we have in place, would be about $150,000. I think that's pretty ridiculous fee, personally. They suggested to me, now I'd say this, but I went to CRI, who does our annual audits, and asked them for some guidelines. So what they suggested that we do is narrow the search, and the window's fine. That told them from 2000 to 2004. They narrow the search down to, say, harborfront property and waterfront property initially, and then maybe next year we do another block, next year another block. And specify what we're looking for. What do we want them to look for? Tell them that we want them to look for changes in lease rates. Just be specific, because right now it's too vague. If we just say, hey, do an audit on these files, what does that look like? They want us to put together something that says, what are we looking for in this audit? And then submit it to them. They'll look it over, make sure it's what helps any auditor out, and then they suggest we put it out for bids, that other audit firms participate. If it's over 50,000, we have to do that anyway. So, but they're just looking to make this a workable project, so that they don't talk off on some tangent and cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. That we come up with very strict provisions on what do we want them to look for. What are they supposed to do when they're doing the audit? I don't have a problem with that. I didn't even think about it when I went to him and said, hey, let's do this. And he's like, dude, you need to narrow the search way down. And he's correct. We have 879 leases. Some of them go back 70 years. Some of them go back 70 days. So we need to know what we're looking for, or what we want them to look for. I can tell you that in 2015, there was a across-the-board rate adjustment done for every lot in town. So there's going to be a different number from anything they audit from 2000 to 2014, or actually through 2015. 2016 till now, there's going to be a different price. So what do we really want this to look like? That's what I'm at. It's not an action item. I just need you guys to kind of narrow down what I'm looking for.
I think one of the main things is we want to make sure that the leases that are current right now actually show where the land was purchased and who purchased it. We don't need to necessarily know how much.
Correct. Well, we don't know in many cases
Right.
that much.
And that way we make sure that property that people are using, they actually own.
Correct.
And it's filed.
And it's filed with the county.
Right. Now, that's what we need to do. I agree with that completely, and I'll make sure that's what we pursue. Because they're going to find that we have many, many leases that we have filed with the county. Because certified mail, I make her certified mailing for the last 7 years of it, that they got them. And then they'll go in and you didn't send me that, and she can show here you did. This is the day I did it, and this is you already signed for certified, and find out they just haven't changed the system.
And that's the things we need to verify.
Correct. Yeah, we can do that. We can easily do that. I think that's a great idea. So.
We also need to verify the price rate, that everybody's at the same rate.
That's right. Everybody should be
That we're all at the same rate.
That's correct.
And
That's right.
everybody's getting charged.
I think one of the other main issues we need to look at is everybody paying the same rate per linear foot based on where they are.
Correct.
Exactly.
That's right.
So, we have all of that data collected, and
That's right.
in a database form, we can massage that and say, okay, all of block 1, which is North Shore, from one end to the other, is all paying the same amount per foot. Now, your
Sure.
footage is gonna be
Sure.
somewhat different, plus or minus 4 or 5 feet probably.
Yeah.
My assumption, they're mostly 50-foot.
Almost all lots there are 50 foot.
Yeah.
And throughout the town, almost everything's between 25 foot or 50 foot. The difference is sometimes we have a few quirky ones where some of my predecessors let people get pieces of another property and things like that. But as a general rule, they're 25 to 50.
So, you can look at the variation in what plus or minus from what it should be. Say it should be $400, and this one's $250. Well, we know we got a problem.
Yeah, you got a
We need to
problem,
look at
right.
that one.
Right.
You know.
The other thing too is I would recommend that we allow it to proceed to a forensic level inspection if something comes up that becomes, hey, this is obviously not right. everybody else in the block is paying $250 and this guy's paying $100. Well, let's do a forensic audit on it. Just dig all the way back and look at its history and see if there's some hidden quirk in that one person's lease that gives them permission to pay on it.
From 2000 to 2024.
That's great. I don't think we need to go back beyond
No.
that.
I think that's good.
Is there anything else that we might need that you think?
Again, I would just narrow it down, the initial one, anything that faces the water. So any harbor property, any stuff along North Shore, anything in Port
Anything
South.
This way, that way.
Yeah,
So,
anything that
Going
faces.
all the way
Are we gonna specify, this section we're gonna do today? I mean,
No, I think what we need to do is get the guidelines written down.
And then I'll present them to you next month, and then
Yeah,
next.
present it next month, and that way we know, everybody knows
So all
exactly
the
what
leases
we're
I'm
voting
very
on.
coming here this way,
Right.
all the way
Right.
around.
I'm a visual person.
Yeah, we need it in writing so we know what we're voting on.
Basically, all these lots,
Everything's gonna
these
slow up.
lots,
Going all the way
these,
around.
and then the waterfront ones down there. I can tell you based on our quasi zoning chart that we created in 2015, that these waterfronts should be the same as those waterfronts. So if they are, they're not, I don't know, we need to check it out.
No, I agree.
I think, well, I'm speaking out of turn, but I would think we could have some comparison done by the next meeting.
Oh, no, yeah, certainly, we can give you some.
As far as
preliminary.
our database,
Correct.
and then we can say, okay, this, we found this or that.
Right, we see 2 or 3 that are.
Yeah,
sense
just
to
for
you.
that particular area, and then if we wanna move over and do something else, commercial property or something, we can do that
Right,
later.
correct.
Yeah, let's get this waterfront stuff done first,
Yeah.
and then we can go back and do the other one.
Right. So there's no action required on that.
Yeah. Okay, preliminary discussion on the establishment of standard property pricing for WCND retained properties throughout the district.
All right. Mr. Kennedy kind of brought this to my attention. It has been a pet peeve of mine for 10 years. Jack and people have been here for all these years know I've asked this board many times to just give me some number of what you think a piece of property should go for. Because as it has been, we come up and somebody says, oh, I'll give you $20,000 for this lot. And I look at comparables, but since we are not provided sale prices on anything in port, property values, any of that stuff, it's purely speculation on our part, then we need to have a price that we think every lot's worth. Like we do, a good example is Eastport subdivision. Not you guys. Several generations back of commissioners assigned values to these lots. Now they overvalued it and they couldn't sell them for 10 years, but once we brought the price down to a point where people were willing to buy them, we sold all 37 lots in less than a year. You know, so what we need to do is find a realistic price for everything. This, we've got prices at $60,000 a piece. People are paying it. That's fine. That means we're in the right place. So, all these other places that are our land, well, these areas, these industrial areas, we agreed 2 years ago on a set price on what they're going to be for. But all this miscellaneous stuff that's in between, this right now is still, these lots, I don't know. I had a person that came in and wanted to build a restaurant. Hey, I'll give you $5,000 a lot. No, I don't think so. But I don't know. Why should I tell
But
them?
as we grow, wouldn't those prices change? I mean, or would
Oh,
you just
sure, of course, we can change them as we go along. But as it is now, I've been waiting 10 years for somebody to say, Ron, these lots should go for $10,000. These lots should go $50,000. Okay.
I think
But it is
first,
now, it's just up to me to pull a number out, and everybody goes, oh, you gave favors. Look, I don't play favors. That's why there's a zoning system in this town. Because when I got here, my predecessor did, one guy paid $250 if it, and the next person paid $70 if the lots touching each other. There was no continuity. Now there is. Well, I want that continuity to continue, and I've been trying for 10 years to get a number. So we need to come up with some numbers.
It doesn't make sense to sell lots in the brush country for $60,000 and then sell waterfront lots for $20,000.
That's right. I completely agree with you.
You know, there's-
however, I think what we need to understand is what do we still own? That map doesn't tell
Oh, no, the
me
map does
anything,
not say.
You know,
Yeah.
so once we know color coded or however you wanna do it.
You've got
these
another
are
map
lots
that
we
shows
own.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't show everything. It just shows it by zone. It doesn't actually say what's ours and what's not.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we need that information
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we need, I don't know if we need to get an appraiser or,
Well, we did the appraiser thing in 2014, and there are no comps in the United States for us. It just doesn't exist. Nobody in the United States, Texas especially, has residential leases in a navigation district. And so when they gave estimates based on Laguna Vista, Bayview, South Padre Island, and Port Aransas.
yeah, we can't.
And they were saying a lot's $1.7 million.
Yeah.
We just went through the local patent place on that about, you know.
I got one.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. You know, saying that, yeah, the allegations somebody paid $80,000 for a $1.7 million lot. That's not true. They're leasing it. One, they didn't buy it, and two, the values are not what they are in Port Aransas. So we need to come up with this. So I can give you guys a list of every property. Is it a waterfront or is it off water? For the next meeting, and we'll say off water properties are X, on water properties are Y. I will tell you, as a spin-off to this, we have a new issue that's arisen for our Eastport subdivision. The lots that are in the median, in between the two streets, they had a designed 10.8 foot setback for the property pins, because then they put a 10-foot utility easement inside the property pin. So now we have a 22-foot setback on this side of the property, and there's already a mandate that your house has to be 15 feet off the property line, so they have a 22-foot setback on the front side of the property. So they lost 40-something feet of their property. So I'm in the process of now working with ADP to do away with the 10 foot in the back so I can bring it to you guys to modify all the plats. Because the plats show, basically they gave up 40 feet of their 80-foot property and didn't know where to build a house.
Are 80 foot wide?
I think they're 80, I'm pretty sure they're 80.
Deep.
Yeah, deep, yeah.
Deep?
Deep, they're 80 foot deep. Yeah. So there's no room to build on. So the idea is if we can take that extra 10 foot off the back now, it's giving them enough room to do something.
Or would it be possible that we could change our setback on the other side to?
Well, the rest of the town is 20, but the Eastport subdivision, the first phase, was set at 15, and the new ones that have already gone in are 15. So if we did it, that'd be less than 15 feet from the front. Then any truck's going to stick out in the street. You don't want that. So you need to leave it at least 15 feet.
Even your Toyota would stick out.
Exactly.
In the street.
That's right.
Now that we're on that subject, which way are the houses going to face?
All properties in Port Mansfield face the water or the roadway. So in this case,
Well, you got water and roadway.
Well, they face the harbor. They would face it. Well, that's true. In this case, they face both ways. But the way they were laid out with the plats is they face this way.
West.
They face the west.
Okay. Yeah, you don't want somebody building one west and one
That's
east.
correct. That's right.
Yeah.
No, as of now, the way it's, as the engineers send in the plat that I'm looking at now that is having a problem, they have the houses facing this direction, which is correct.
There's nobody there right now,
No, there's nobody. That's the first builder's trying to build now, and that's where this has come up.
Yeah.
He's like, I can't, we have a 1,500 square foot requirement. And you'd have to have a 3 or 4 story house to get that much square footage and that small a footprint. So,
Okay.
but we'll, you would want to table that or whatever, and I'll bring you some
Yeah,
specifics.
we'll just get more information and we'll just take it for now.
Yeah, I move to table that.
All right. Motion made by Commissioner Kendrick to the table, seconded by Commissioner Cavazos. All in favor? Motion carried. All right, discussion and possible action on establishment of a noise ordinance beyond provisions of state ordinance.
Yeah. About a year ago, we started talking about noise ordinances, and Allison drafted us a local noise ordinance back then. And kind of kiboshed it because we found out the state of Texas has a mandated noise ordinance already in place. So it was really, really necessary for us to have a basically duplicate ordinance on top of a state ordinance. In fact, the state ordinance, regardless of what we pass, supersedes this, regardless of what we do. So initially, I was like, why waste our time? It's just another bureaucratic thing to get in our way of doing our job. But with all the stuff that's been going on as far as dueling banjos between different locations about noise and sound and so on and so forth, I asked Allison to review it and submit it back to us for review. Sitting down and looking through this extensively over the last week or so, I think that this is a pretty well-written, comprehensive noise ordinance. The key points are that residential areas have a 75 decibel daytime and 70 decibel nighttime reporting. To give you an idea of what that means, we have done some local sound testing. We have the equipment to do it now, and even the loud music from the restaurant on the waterfront very rarely exceeds the 70, 75 decibels. Is that correct, Chief? You want to emphasize on what 70 sounds like and 75?
After multiple spot checks and then on-scene checks, we had to work hard to get anywhere close to the state level that is disorderly conduct. I worked closely with Mr. Kennedy, and we did some tests that were just basically static tests, so we knew what would make what noise and what would be above 85, and he'll tell you we had to work hard to get to 85. And it was to where you didn't want to leave it anywhere near you because it was just really uncomfortable. Then we went to a spot check and then an on-scene check with the restaurant bar in question. And we actually worked with them. Their in-house system wasn't capable of reaching 80 without exceeding its mechanical limits, meaning the speakers were going to blow. And we did that during the day from across the water and on shore, right there up against it with 2 different meters. We then followed back around when they didn't know we were going to be there, took a reading from outside, and we reached 75, 76 at the best when they knew we were there. And we had them, okay, now I want you to see what is too loud. Had them turn it up. Okay, this exceeds the limit. But they worked hard to reach 80. And that was with 2 different meters, and we've since bought another meter. We used an app and a certified meter that was borrowed until we got our own. So I've reviewed what is there. It's reasonable. It sets out some expectations for after hours, weekends. It differentiates between a residential and a business and allows the business to operate within guidelines. And 80 decibels, I think, is plenty enough for a restaurant bar. The science of water, we don't have trees, we don't have walls, there's nothing to absorb the sound. So scientifically, based on water and heat and so forth, you can get into the weeds with it, the sound travels. For instance, when we were doing the test, the sound level really didn't dissipate from all the way across the harbor. Even at 70, it seemed loud, but when you're metering it, it wasn't all that loud, but you could still hear it because there was nothing to absorb that sound. So based on what's written, I'm in full support of the ordinance as written.
A couple of other highlights that I want to bring, just the numbers so people understand what they are. Is for a residential area, it's 75 during the day, 70 in the evenings. Non-residential properties is 85 in the daytime and 80 at night. The state of Texas is at 85, so it makes that a stronger provision than what the state has. There are some what they call affirmative defenses in legal terms, basically exceptions to the rule. But it has to be permitted in almost every case. Parades, any kind of spectator event, they can get a permit to exceed the limits for the time of that event. Pyrotechnics display, 4th of July, I mean, the town is legendary for its fireworks display every year. So when that's going on, they can get a permit, and they already do get a permit from us to do that. Spectator events, we do have running events occasionally, bicycling events that come into town, fishing tournaments, things of that nature. They can exceed it for limitations, very limited times. And then one of them that caught my attention, I thought was a good addition, was the erection, excavation, construction, demolition, alteration, or repair work. One, it has to be permitted from to do the work, which it is. They wouldn't be there if they weren't getting a permit from us. And they, from 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. can go to 95 decibels, but after 9 o'clock they have to not be making anything more than the regular provision, which is 80. So, and I don't foresee that ever happening, but it potentially could happen. They also have one provision for mechanically drilling and sanding around household stuff. You know, you've got a carpenter in town who's working on a project. Mr. Ficklin, let's say, has a building he's building. Between 7 in the morning and 9 at night, he can get up to 95 decibels. So it's not likely to happen. A handsaw doesn't get nearly that loud, but it gives a provision in case it was to happen. So I think as this was developed and presented by Allison, I think this...
Is Exhibit A is from Allison, or is this from the state?
No, this is her. This is awful. The state doesn't have all the exemptions, and it has a number of 85. It's a rule, but it's a very narrow rule. but this gets very particular and in detail.
Yeah,
Would this
Allison and my
cover-
office drafted all of that whole thing, yeah.
Would this cover like at the unloading barges and?
Yeah.
Sure, theoretically, yes, it would. Yeah.
Okay.
Ron, question. For the business, I believe I read it was a maximum of 80, or is it 85?
No, it's 85 with the nighttime 80.
And that's where that caught my eye was diesel engines and brakes, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, when we finish Navigation Drive, I'm gonna ask you guys to pass an ordinance that prohibits engine braking, period. And we're gonna put signage up as they come into town and in the construction, I mean, in the queuing yard area, that tells the truck drivers you cannot engine brake. Yeah, it's correct. You can't use your engine to brake your truck because it's too noisy. There's no reason to do it. If your truck's that crappy, you shouldn't be coming in port driving in the first place. So, you use your regular brakes. So.
Well, why would we have two different levels for residential and non-residential?
Because a business has got, for example, a restaurant is going to make a little more noise, even if they don't have music. Just the fact that they have crowds of people, they're going to generate more sound than a house. So there needs to be some variance in that. And that number actually reflects the state of Texas standards. We're not making it, giving them more room to make more noise. We're just saying, hey, we're going to stick with this standard that the state established.
Well, I think over there at the bar, if they turn their speakers inside instead of turning them out towards the water,
That might help too.
it'd make a huge difference.
Sure.
From my perspective, I don't see how we could possibly enforce this. You put a boat going out of the
I know, you're
harbor
right.
and they've got music blasting where, you can hear it for a half a mile away.
But chances are they probably don't get over 80. I've got a pretty good sound system in my boat. And they actually brought the meters over there and we turned it up loud enough where you couldn't stand in the boat and listen to it. We never got over 80 decibels.
What was it? What did you get to? What was the highest that you left?
80.
80.
Was it 80 or
Yeah, 80 was
78 to 80?
80 was really loud, and that's what even at the bar they were working hard to reach 80.
And did you, when you went across the harbor, what was it? What
The
was it?
dissipation was minimal. It had to do with atmospherics, weather, wind, what was carrying it. It didn't dissipate a lot, but like I said, we don't have trees, we don't have shrubs. There's nothing to absorb sound.
Yeah.
The science of water, and guys that fish all the time know it, there can be a boat half a mile from you and on a calm day, you can hear them talking in the
Oh,
boat,
absolutely.
you know. But what happens is the water temperature on top of the water is cooler. So as you go up in the atmosphere, that air gets warmer. So the warmer air is pushing the sound waves down on top of the water, so it actually just reflects across the top of the water.
The one thing that I'll bring with Mr. Kendrick, I agree with him completely, and it's not on here, we may want to make an amendment soon when we get some real numbers. Airboats,
Yeah.
they are deafeningly loud. They're probably in the 100 to 120 range. It's not addressed in here at all. And the airboat ramp was built in the south side of town, Newport South, for a reason, for the airboats to use that ramp as much as possible. Because when they use the ramps in the harbor, just to get out of the harbor, they're definitely, I guarantee they're more than 100 decibels. But we need to be able to address how that can be done or can't be done, how long can that sound extend for. Can they extend for 5 minutes as they get out, or do they not allowed to launch in there at all, which is going to majorly impact a lot of our charter
Well,
boats.
you know, lately, we don't have very many airboats.
Not as many as we used to, but the point is that we do have that type of clientele. We have guys who make a living on using those boats and for duck hunting and the whole 9 yards, and that's not addressed in here.
Well, when they're going out of the harbor, though, they're idling.
But just
Just-
those engines
still-
ain't much much
Yeah, I don't think it's until they get to the mouth of the harbor and
Yeah.
they stand on it,
Yeah.
then it gets pretty loud.
Yeah, it definitely gets loud there. But that's just something we might want to amend this in the future to include something about airboats where they can operate, where they're as part of the noise ordinance. That just might be something to consider. But other than that, I think this is adequate, and the chief agrees that this is probably pretty adequate.
So that ramp on the south, for the airboats, is it usable?
Yeah.
Okay, then.
They have to adjust their trailers
Yeah.
to get, but everybody's pretty much adjusted to it.
So what's keeping them from, why do they use the other?
Convenience.
Very seldom.
Nowadays, they're not doing it like they used to. It used to be all the time.
I used to launch my
You-
airboat in the harbor all the time before they built that ramp over there. And, you know, we idle out, but like I say, when you get to the mouth of the harbor, people live in the condos and stuff out there are gonna get an earful.
That's correct. That's why we need to put that in, I think, as an exemption.
I just get somewhat concerned that we start getting so many ordinances of what you can and can't do, and, you know, now we got the airboats creating potential havoc against this ordinance, and what do we do to that versus this guy over here that had a mute, you know, I don't know, is it worth it? Or-
Well, we're probably the only port on the Gulf Coast that doesn't have a sound ordinance of some kind.
But
Some of them are way
over
more
and
strict
above-
than this.
Over and above the state.
Well, we do have the
Yeah,
water
some of them are
code
way
has-
more strict than
Well, this
this.
falls under the water code.
So,
I mean, the state-
No, we have
the
permission to
state-
do it.
we got copies from 7 or 8 different ports. Port Isabel, the Island, Rockport, Port A, and some of them were these same guidelines, and some of them were actually more strict than this. They were down at like 65.
Yes, the biggest difference in many of those guys' cases is they adopt whatever the city adjacent to them is. So if Brownsville has an ordinance, the Port of Brownsville just uses the Brownsville city ordinance. If Port Aransas has an ordinance, the town of Port Aransas has an ordinance, and the district's using their numbers. It only makes sense because they're adjacent to a governing body that already has a rule, just adopt the rule. In our case, we do not have a neighboring body that already has a rule, and it's also against, I found it last week, that the state of Texas does not allow counties to enforce noise ordinances in unincorporated areas. So they can't be a rule out there besides us. We are the only rule that's gonna be out there. So,
But we'll never supersede.
oh no, we don't need to. This is a little bit
And
better.
the state won't supersede a federal ordinance.
No, that's correct. Well, not that I'm aware of any federal ordinances on noise, but yes, that's correct, they will. If you might want to read this, bet you vote upon this, if you would. This is a resolution. Just read the resolution of, you guys can vote on the resolution. Here, keep that one. Ready?
Y'all have any more questions?
Only thing you read is where it says ordinance, and ordinance for the Willacy County.
Just the top part of the caption.
All right, I'm gonna read the ordinance.
The resolution.
I mean, the resolution, I'm sorry. An ordinance of the Willacy County Navigation District, Willacy County, Texas, adopting regulations and prohibitions pertaining to the noise within the district, declaring a nuisance, providing for penalty, providing for affirmative defense, providing for servability, and providing an effective date. We need to read the whole thing.
Just the top of the caption.
So that's basically the resolution.
So just need somebody to make a motion to
Yeah,
approve
so
or disapprove.
we just need a motion to approve or disapprove.
And this was reviewed by Allison.
Allison
I made a
drafted it.
motion that
She's the one that drafted it.
Yeah.
Attorney reviewed this. I make a motion that we accept.
All right, motion's been made by Commissioner Cavazos,
Second.
second by Commissioner Reyes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
You make sure you note that.
Well, the vote's 2-1, so the motion carries.
Director Mills, is that gonna constitute the first reading?
I think that's all we need, correct?
Is it automatic passage?
Yeah, it should be all we need.
Yeah, I just signed the resolution. It's done. Do that after the meeting. Okay, the next item is Port Director's report.
All right, we're fortunate because it's been over a year. that the colonel was passing through the area and decided to pay us a visit. Came in unexpectedly early, but Mr. Kennedy still was able to help me come in here and listen in on what they talked about. The main thing they came here for was to discuss our $15.9 million that the Army Secretary gave to Galveston to dredge the channel out to the Gulf of Mexico and what that entailed. We got a very extensive discussion about the jetties and the problem at the jetties, where they're going to put the extra material. That is their number one problem. They built what everybody in here knows is Bird Island right outside the harbor. It was built, it's always been there with kind of like two berms to bounce the sand off of and create a small island. So the last time they were here in 2021, 2022, they actually enclosed it on 4 sides. And that was supposed to hold 5 dredging cycles worth of material. Well, they overfilled it with the first dredging cycle. It's got way more material than it was ever designed to hold already. So they're trying to figure out what are they going to do with the extra material this time because they don't have any place to put it. They can put small amounts on the existing islands that are on the south side of the cut or the channel when you're going out the cut. They're okay with doing that in small amounts, but they expect the volume to be too much for that. So what they're currently discussing doing is where Bird Island sits now, they want to put a rock berm on the north side going up the intercoastal. I think it's got 250, 300 feet of rock that they want to put on that side and bounce the sand off the back side. The reason they're doing that is they don't want that sand to slide into the into the intercoastal canal and block up the canal. They'll put rocks there to let it slide up against the canal and create eventually over time it'll actually be a rookery island that the birds can go and land on. What they have to do to make that work, however, is the birds won't nest on the soft talcum powder bottom that we have in the lagoon. It needs actual sand. So what they'll do is they'll put that berm in, put the talcum powdery soft stuff that we have in the laguna against it, and then they'll bring some sand from out near the jetties over and put on top and hope that'll lure the birds to start rooking there and doing their thing. So that's their initial plan. So they've become aware, after I keep telling them, much like a lot of other people just don't believe it when we try to tell them information, that we follow the book on all this stuff, is that there is a huge problem between the jetties. And anybody who's a fisherman here knows that. Particularly those people who have offshore boats know for damn sure that there is a problem between the jetties. July 2022, it was 23 feet. January 2023, it was 11 feet. Now, there's places it's as little as 5 feet. So anybody with a decent sized offshore boat is going to have a problem getting in and out. Also, when we have rough seas in the winter, there's breakers across the cut. We've already had a fatality in 2021 from somebody trying to go on out in rough seas. So they acknowledge there's a problem. They know that they can't get here for the project until later in the year. So what they have is a Corps of Engineers dredge, which has been here before, the Murden. It's been what they call a hopper barge, which means they just put all this material inside of themselves, take it offshore somewhere and dump it in one of their designated spots. So the Murden comes out of the yard for repairs in January, and it's going to be coming back to the Texas area, and they volunteered it to us as part of the project. It'll be part of the total of $18 million they have in our name, to bring it down here in latter January, early February, to clear out the cut for the time being, get it down to say 10 feet, 15 feet, so that people can go in and out without risk of capsizing their boats and so on and so forth. So in addition to our real big project that'll start in probably October, they're willing to come earlier and do that. So I project now that probably in January, February, I believe it'll be closer to the middle of February knowing the Corps, there will be a dredge from the Corps here that'll help clear out the jetties to make it safe for people to go in and out during the winter, and that'll also open it up for tournament season. So we should be better than we are now for dang sure. So we're well on our way with the Corps and our major dredging project. As of now, that'll be announced in July, awarded in August, and they expect the work will start in October. So that's from the jetty all the way into the harbor. They're going to come in the harbor all the way up to the north boat ramp and probably slightly beyond the north boat ramp. Actually, I take that back. They concurred that the second queuing yard, that if we do or don't put the seawall in it, they were going to bring it all the way to the end of that area so that this would be a usable box. So, they haven't gone that far in since I've been here.
We also talked about the leakage over here.
Yeah, that's right. They continue to bring up, the people in the operations side of the business continue to bring up the berm in town, the big mountain at the side of town. It's been a problem forever. They admitted it. There's one of the gentlemen who's here is out of Corpus Christi. He's the engineer for this region. He's been in this position since 1998, so he knows all about the problems with dust and whole 9 yards. And he doesn't want to ever use it again, but they understand that there's a leakage problem. Basically on the park side of that berm, there's about 4 or 5 places you drive down the road where water's running across the road, and they actually had to put culverts in so the water could run there, because the thing is still holding water after 30 years, and the water's leaking out. Also, Frank brought it to my attention about a year ago, a little less than a year ago, that the end of it, where in this picture you see a little white cloud, and this picture's from 2002. This little white cloud right here at the end, well, that is much bigger than that now, but more importantly, this berm is starting to slough off. You can see the material. It's starting to slide down. Yeah. So I've asked them to make sure that the one they send people out to address that, because they may have to put rock or something on it to stabilize it. But at a minimum, they would have to move all the material somewhere else, and that's an amount of material that I can't even fathom. So.
But that's not accessible, is it?
Well, we don't know. We're thinking that that leakage right there, if it's all that soft sand and silt.
And what'll happen is
it's gonna
all
go
this
right in the
material
mouth
is
of
going to
water.
go right here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. If that was to give way all at once, which it could do, all this soft material, which is still very soft, almost liquid at the bottom.
Never least until they dug that hole.
So that's
You know, that whole berm is grown up in brush.
yeah. Which is good as far as the wind and the dust problem, but at the same time it may be deteriorating.
Well, if you go by it now and look, you can see where it's caved off.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
On the outside.
Yeah.
Is
That
that on
needs-
the water side?
It's on the water side, yeah.
So the next thing on here
Well,
is
that doesn't, excuse me.
Sure.
That piece of property doesn't actually belong to us anyway.
it was deeded or leased, I should say, to the Corps of Engineers. They actually take ownership of it while they have it. We can get it back from them, which I was trying to do for a few years. But then when I realized it was having so many problems, I didn't want to inherit those problems. So I'm like, you keep it.
They
it's
need to
yours.
fix their
So-
problems.
Exactly. Exactly. So I backed away and said, no, you guys deal with it. They are still looking for another place. And down the road somewhere, many years from now maybe, they want to consider using up near the fence line on the ranch. But I don't know that that's ever going to happen. But they mentioned it occasionally. It's away from all the
Eventually gonna run
houses.
out of places to put this.
That's
stuff.
correct. That's right. Well, I'm on the governor's board for environmental issues in the Laguna Madre. Been on it for like 7 or 8 years now. And you heard me tell the board them that the other day. The GLO, up until 8 years ago, believed that all the now submerged dredge islands were still visible. They were swearing to it. I was going to public meetings and they were like, oh yeah, you're going to have these things turn into rookery islands and the birds are going to be happy. And I'm like, they don't exist. They're underwater. Oh no, that's not true. So the following 6 months later, when I went back to them again for the next meeting, they're like, oh, you're right, there's no islands there. Well, they have an agreement now with the Corps to rebuild those islands, theoretically. So now when they do the cut every 2 years, when they do the intercoastal, they throw some material on there. But because of the stop of material, the birds don't root there. And it also dissolves quickly back into the lagoon. So it's as they call it, a chicken or an egg situation. They don't know which one to do first, but they're still trying to work. Yeah, well, Mr. Kendrick asked about a year ago, I posted a deputy director position, various locations all over the country. I got 3 people back. One was in Nigeria, and the other 2 were people who were interested only because I mentioned that we had an airport. They had no maritime background, knew nothing about ports, they knew nothing about residential, nothing. They just wanted to talk about the airport. So I didn't even bring them to the table because they had no background. So I reposted the position again. I will probably this time put it on Indeed or something, which we have to pay for, but the other ones I did before because they didn't cost anything. But I'm probably going to use Indeed or some other headhunter service to help us find somebody to fill that position. And that I took the whole airport, the word airport, out of the solicitation. So we shouldn't get any people inquiring about airport jobs when they don't exist.
I would suggest we, at a minimum, put it in Indeed or some of these
Yeah,
that
especially-
you have to pay a few bucks.
Yeah.
Get hold
That's
of
correct.
it.
Yeah, and I tried to avoid that last time, but this time we'll just do
Yeah,
that.
and if they don't pan out, I'll
Why don't you explain why you're wanting to do that?
Well, there's several reasons why the board decided they wanted me to do it, and I definitely agree with them. I mean, when I got here 10 years ago, the port director's job was literally to help out the PUD with their, water issues and things of that nature, and make sure that the streets got fixed and some of the other basic stuff the port director did here, painting buildings and so on and so forth. But this job has obviously grown way, way beyond that, way outside that spectrum. And so the whole idea of having a deputy is, one, to have somebody to take some of those jobs and take care of them, but also to prepare somebody to take my spot down the road. Because it's very difficult to find anybody with a maritime background that will come to the Willacy County for the amount of money Willacy County pays. It's just not gonna happen. But if you have somebody you bring in at a lower pay scale and promote them up to a position where they are in a leadership position and have experience from having worked here, then that way I can, in a couple more years, go, thank you very much, it's been pleasant, see you later, and let somebody take that position over. Because if you tried right now to go out and find somebody to fill my position, it's going to be more than double what I'm getting paid. Easily more than double what I'm getting paid. And I understand that, we say this is the valley. Well, that's the reason the valley's the valley. Because the standard's always been, it's a valley, you can pay less. Well, why? You should make the same amount in Brownsville as you make in Houston. Why should there be a difference? And that's the way the rest of Texas views it. The rest of Texas goes, I'm going to do that job. I want to make the money I'd make in Houston. Now, obviously, that's not a real comparison, but certainly make as much as they're making in Victoria. So that's the main reason we're doing the solicitation, to start training somebody up. There's actually a program now in McAllen at Texas A&M. They took a division of Texas A&M Galveston, the Maritime Division, and put a branch of it in McAllen. It's a legit 100% Texas A&M program for marine management. I've reached out to their director. I'm going to try to reach out to him again to see if we can get maybe some interested interns to come in and do some internships and get them kind of lined up. So we'll see where it goes, but that's what we're working on.
I had a friend of mine that used to do that, and he would go to A&M and Texas Tech and all the colleges on career day, and he would actually hire engineers out of those things to put in his company.
Absolutely.
And it worked out really good for him.
Yeah.
It does.
And that may be an option, they all have placement centers.
I think maybe we can reach out to UTRGB, because I know when I was there, they started a new program to solicitate cities.
That's correct.
And they have models here, and I'm sure that they can create a model for us specifically,
Yeah.
if we ask them.
There's actually one of those also at the LRGDB Development Council. They have a whole
Yeah.
building
They
that's
give-
only purpose
they
of that
give the
building.
local students an opportunity.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. Yes, ma'am. All right, the last thing we have on here is the PUD. Mr. Kennedy got promoted. Mr. Dean moved out of the area, selling his house. So we have two vacancies. We actually have three people's names have come back up for appointment. The third person, Mr. Alanis, is still in his position, but he has reapplied, but that doesn't mean somebody else can't take his place. It'll be up to you guys. Currently, I have 5 applicants for 3 spots. So I'll be contacting you to do what our policy statement says, and that is before the January meeting, potentially have a special session to talk about those applicants so that you guys can decide who you want it to be, and then that way they'll be ready for the January meeting. January meeting, you'll appoint 3 this year, just as a reminder. Then the following year, you'll have 2, and those same 3 will come up. So it's 3-2, 3-2 every other year. So, but we have 5 applicants currently.
Good. Any more questions for Ron? Review and discussion on building authorizations issued for the month of November 2024. There's only one.
Yeah, it was for,
So,
yeah. I mean, it was really slow mo. Nobody came around.
Review and consideration of residential commercial transfers of leases, post-all leases, transfers, and collateral transfers of lease. There's a list of those.
If I could add on to this as part of this briefly. We have, it's been going on for 50 years, but it's become really problematic in the last 6 to 9 months, and I'm gonna have to give a Alice on this. What we need to do is come up with a cover letter for our lease process that explains that the process is a lease. Now you think, oh, everybody here is mature enough to understand that when they're going to a real estate office or a title company and you're signing all these papers, you're reading them. We all know what that ain't happening. And so they assume the title person's honest and that they're giving them paperwork and so on and so forth. Well, the title company does not tell these people, almost ever, that it's a lease. Then the people get it, and they, a year later we send them a bill and they go, why am I paying you this money? Well, because you leased the property. There's nothing that stands out in big bold letters at the beginning that says this is a lease. It says lease on the top, but that's not adequate. It just has not proven to be adequate. And we're almost on a weekly basis now dealing with people who did not understand that they had leased the property. So we need some way to make our lease more overtly a lease, because it is truly becoming a problem for people who are never told that they got their property and it was a lease. I mean, we have the gentleman was here the last month, I can't remember his name right now, the engineer, who said he's been in his house for 33 years and never realized he was leasing it.
Gordon?
So, no, the other gentleman, I can't remember. But, you know, I can't believe an engineer would live in a house 33 years and not realize he's leasing his property, but is it legit that he don't know? I don't know. But we're not doing anything to provide a service. So I'm going to be asking Allison to provide us some kind of a cover letter, something that articulates that this is a lease, and make the title companies and the lawyers provide that with the people, to the people, so they understand what they're getting into. Because it's really, really becoming a problem.
Well, I think we've got some amending to do on our leases anyways. We need to get our legal folks to really look at these leases, because one of the issues that we have, and you and I have talked about it, is having a commercial lease with a residential clause in it, with a RV park clause in it, and a fish house in it, and you got 4 or 5 different things that you can establish that property for.
Right.
So you wind up selling it commercial, and 5 years later it turns into residential. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Or you wind up with an RV park across the street from your house. You know, so we need to narrow that down. It's either going to be residential or commercial. So that's something we need to change.
I think that's a good idea, Ron. But I think we actually need a packet of information for potential.
There you go.
They do, they get one. Leslie sends it.
It's got all the ordinances, it's got all.
Oh, no, we don't have that. That's a good point, yes.
Contact people, you yourself, Ron, the board, you know. I mean, we need to give people some information instead of just, they get blindsided, you know.
I think residents ought to be able to get a hold of the board member.
I do too, huh?
You know, it's part of our pay grade.
That's right.
They ought to be able to call us and say, hey, we have an issue, you know, and we may not like it. I mean, you know where I live. I get people pulling in there all the time, you know, and I love talking to people. I do not mind them stopping by and talking. And if I don't want them to stop by, I just won't sit in my chair in front of the garage.
Lower your door.
Yeah, I'll lower the door. Yeah. But anyways, back to business.
Motion on
Yeah, we need a motion to accept the leases.
So forth. They've been reviewed, right?
it. Yes.
Motion made by Commissioner Cavazos and seconded by Commissioner Reyes. All in favor?
All right.
All opposed? Motion carried.
Got a question. Where's South Harbor Drive?
South Harbor is pretty much, well, on the road that leads to Pelican, the sub condominium.
Right.
Yeah, that's South Harbor.
Well, there's people here that are buying a bunch of lots for outfitting.
Yeah, there is a couple that have owned several of those condominiums for a very, very long time. They have historically been a massive problem as far as getting them to pay utilities and everything else. And they finally got themselves financially in a position they needed to bail on them, and this other company picked them up. So that's It's all one block of condos that's been there forever, but for us, administratively, we are more than happy for them to go away, so. yeah.
Oh, okay, those 7 or 8 condos
That's
on
correct.
that back.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, got it.
That's the ones on the water.
Yes.
They remodeled all those.
They did
not
all
too
the
long
remodel and
ago.
everything else, but they still didn't pay their bills. So
Yeah.
now, this way, we'll hopefully get bills paid on
Yeah,
it.
'cause they need some repairs. All right, review and consideration of checks and vouchers, and any discussion, comments on monthly budget report and budgeted versus actual.
How much of this professional fees you anticipate?
I'm not sure how much, if you're gonna ask how much we're gonna get back, we're not really sure. I've talked to the TxDOT lady who represents this area, that handles the files, and she implied that we'd be able to get some back, but she didn't give me a number of what that looked like. I'm gonna say we'll get 35 to 50%.
What does that include?
Well, the stuff up to now is up to about $900,000 total. That includes designing the whole project, doing the specs on it, not just designing it, but actually speccing it out so that you can know what kind of materials to bring. It was a very complicated process. They had to get the engineering, not the engineering, the environmental permits from the Corps, which they're still working on now, because the modification to the environmental permit may or may not happen, but as it was awarded, it says that everything has to be vibrated into place and not pile driven. Fine, but the problem is when you get down with sheet pile down to the last 3 feet to get it level so you can put the concrete cap on it, it's very hard to do vibrating it. You don't control it as well. So they're asking for a modification to allow it to be pile driven the last 3 feet. So they're still working on stuff for us. It's gonna continue to add on probably for another, well, now they're gonna be running this project, so they'll be on it forever. But all that's covered. That's completely covered by the project now that it's been awarded. And probably modifying the environmental permit will also be able to be covered. So anything we get from this date forward is fine. But before this was awarded by under bid, there's only a percentage of it that we can claim. Some of it we can claim that's beyond the design. The design, we won't get the money back. But anything else they did, we should be able to get some of that work, if not all of it. The TxDOT told me, submit them a package with all the thing on it, and they'll tell us what we're gonna pay. But I'm not sure what the amount's gonna be.
You know, we got some issues with actual versus budget that we'll not have to amend the budget. You know, we got into that
Right.
pickle the other time.
Right.
We don't automatically
Right.
assume that because we said, yeah, buy that truck,
Yeah.
that increases the budget by that amount.
No, that's correct.
So we've already got several areas here that we probably need to be thinking
Make some
about.
amendments.
Yeah, amend the budget. And find out exactly why we're.
Sure.
over
We'll bring it in the next meeting.
One of the things that I have a hard time finding is when we sell property, like when we sell the lots in the new subdivision, it's hard to tell, well, in fact, I don't have any idea where it's at.
Right. Virginia,
Yes.
where do you file the sold property, stuff that people give us money for? Where do you put that?
On the one that Mr. Kendrick was asking about.
Yeah, but what
It's
page?
the proceeds, deposits, it's on the balance sheet report. Right now it's showing the -40 because we had to give a refund.
We gave a refund on a property, but at the same time, we had a person buy a lot. And so it was a $60,000 refund, but we got 20,000 in, so it was a -40.
Proceeds of assets.
Right, now next month, it should be a positive 160 or 180, I'm sorry. Because we should have at least 2, if not 3 lots come through the next,
Well, we have one,
or one's in here now. So
Here.
next month, it'll show us
and
60,000.
so we have 2 pending.
Yeah, 2. So we have a total of 180,000. It'll fall in where she's describing,
Okay.
For the proceeds?
So
under proceeds.
how do we compare the lots that we've sold and the money we've collected versus what we've spent to put all the infrastructure in?
I can run a report for you.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. This miscellaneous revenues here,
the miscellaneous revenue, that's just random stuff that comes in from either the police departments, the Valley telephone checks.
Oh, yeah, that's right, you told me
Yes.
that.
And
That's
anything
an
that
awful
Lefty
lot of money for
Transfers.
just little
Transfers,
check
yeah.
dabbling in and out.
Transfers from the
Right.
transactions.
Yeah, plus everything
Right.
Lefty does, transfers and things of that nature, it could be
Building
125, could be
permits.
250, a burley permit, all that stuff, that goes under miscellaneous.
Airport fees.
Correct.
Yeah, but it's $227,000.
That's because they,
Well,
yeah.
part of that was
Yeah, I know,
200,000.
Valley Telephone was-
Yeah, Valley Telephone, 200,000 for most of that.
Yeah. And the PUD got 90 or
180.
180. That pays for our project we got going
That's
right now.
correct, that's right.
All right, any more questions? Need a motion to accept the vouchers. Motion made by Commissioner Reyes, seconded by Commissioner Cavazos. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Motion to adjourn.
Oh, mate. Do it.